establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. It's reported MPs will grill ITV in Parliament next week over its handling of Philip Schofield's affair with a younger male colleague. He quit ITV and was dropped by his agency after admitting to the affair. The Prince's Trust has tonight also dropped Philip as an ambassador, saying his involvement is no longer appropriate. The broadcaster insists it investigated rumours at the time and that both parties categorically and repeatedly denied them. But in an exclusive interview with GB News, Eamon Holmes accused ITV of a cover-up. He also told Dan Wootton he feels used over Philip's coming out on This Morning.
It was all a bit weird. Yeah. At that stage, though, I believed he was gay and that's what he was coming out, and that was the information we were given. We were lied to, and Ruth and I, to this day, are embarrassed and ashamed when we see those pictures, when we see the toils that some people who are tortured by their sexuality have to go through. And this man, was this a cover-up for something else? And something else which does not reflect well on him, of course, bearing in mind his brother is now a convicted paedophile as well. So we feel angry.
Downing Street has denied claims of a cover-up after delaying the release of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's WhatsApp messages to the COVID inquiry. The inquiry has now extended the deadline for the government to hand over the unredacted messages to Thursday. The Prime Minister insists the government is cooperating, but Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says he's withholding information.
He says he wants the government to cooperate with the inquiry, but the government has been withholding information the inquiry's asked for. 1 minute the government says that the messages they have are immaterial, the next minute they're saying they don't exist. Well, which is it? And I'm afraid the Prime Minister's slipperiness today has given all the impression of someone who isn't fully committed to transparency, openness, accountability.
A feminist professor has had her talk at Oxford University interrupted by trans rights protesters. Earlier, the Prime Minister defended Kathleen Stock's right to speak, saying debate is a hallmark of a tolerant society. But activists from the university's LGBTQ+ society booed, waved rainbow flags, and one appeared to glue herself to the floor before being escorted out by security. And rail passengers are facing more travel disruption amid further strike action, with train companies warning services will be severely reduced. Members of the drivers' union, ASLEF, will walk out tomorrow and Saturday, while the RMT union is holding industrial action this Friday. The move is the latest in a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Passengers are being advised to plan ahead and check the times of the first and last trains. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight to seduce Wednesday's newspapers like the news Casanovae that they are, Leo Kearse and Scott Capurro. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you both? You very well?
Yeah.
You're looking particularly well groomed, Leo. I saw you only last night and there seems to have been an improvement, an uptick.
What, you think I hadn't washed yesterday?
I don't know, there's a little bit of, I don't know, I feel like
exactly the same.
Somebody's gone over you with one of those Furminators, like we use on the Golden Retriever.
It's just I'm just sitting closer to you.
Oh, is it what it is? You're in focus. And you always look immaculate, Scott.
You're sweet to say. I feel a bit sloppy because you're both wearing jackets. I mean, you know, old jackets, but jackets nonetheless. But you put on a bit more rouge today, I think you did. You did, right? You did. Yeah.
We do have the best of the makeup women in tonight, actually. It is always a treat, isn't it, when they have the full spread out, because sometimes they just come around with a boots number 7, don't they? And you feel a little bit cheated. But anyway, let's get on with our front pages. We have the Daily Mail, first of all, with AI could wipe out humanity. That's a fairly robust start to the evening. The Guardian, government accused of cover-up over battle for COVID evidence. And a picture of Elizabeth Holmes on her way to an 11-year jail sentence. Daily Express, civil servants threaten to strike over migrants. And there's Philip and Holly there, of course. The Times, AI pioneers face extinction. That seems a subtle twist on the story. The Sun, defiant Holly back on Monday. And that's this morning, of course. And finally, the Daily Star, spy who came in from the cod. It's been a while since I've heard cod in a good punning headline. Those were your front pages. So, Leo, we kick off with the front page of The Guardian. 3 good stories there. Choose whichever one you want to go in on.
I'll do all of them. So they've got a picture of Elizabeth Holmes. She was the boss of Theranos. Sounds like an Avenger, but it was actually this sort of medical company. And she said you can put a drop of blood into this machine and it'll tell you everything wrong with you.
Genius.
Amazing. And people just believed her because she was, and especially men, these old men like Bill Clinton, Rupert Murdoch,
Gates.
She said, every man who went near her immediately got aroused and gave her money.
Absolutely persuaded that they had finally got themselves a live one, a gorgeous blonde genius in Silicon Valley instead of the usual specimens.
Sadly, they don't exist.
No.
So they lost lots of money and she's going to jail.
Was it? I mean, obviously the court case was years ago and we all had time to... I think we did cover it in the early days of this programme, didn't we? But there was a sort of sense I always felt that she was kind of goaded by everybody else's belief. Do you know what I mean? She was kind of egged on by them, kind of, that's amazing. And she would kind of go, and it can cure cancer. Oh, you know what I mean?
She took what she was given.
So like Jesus a little bit, you know, built up by his believers.
Yes, exactly.
Really pumped up, right.
Well, all great orators do that, you know, even the little Austrian. That's how they work.
I also think they're so eager to make money in Silicon Valley. There's so many people who think they're going to make $1 million in a day or more that they think, well, this is our new, you know, this is it. This is our
Which
icon.
I guess is why they have had to give her this extraordinarily stiff sentence.
11 years, quite a lot.
It's quite a lot for a white-collar crime because essentially investors and stuff, but you've got to try and dissuade people, haven't you? You've got to disincentivise it. You've got to make their downside.
She'll be out in 4 years, the book and movie deal. It's weird, the security guards in the photo that are following her are quite casually dressed. One woman has the shirt out in the back, and the guy's got a gun, but his keys are in front of the gun.
It looks nice and rural.
It does. Yeah, there's foliage
it looks
around.
like he could go for his gun and just grab his garage door key by accident.
A little bit. Yeah.
What else have you got on that front page, Leo?
So they've got Kremlin threat after Moscow hit by drones. So Ukraine, or they're saying not Ukraine.
I don't think it is Ukraine.
Yes,
go with your theory.
Because we've seen recently Russian separatists go into Belgorod and seize, actually kill people in Russia and seize parts of Russia before running for the border. Because of course the West made a condition of all the weapons it gives to Ukraine, they can't be used to attack inside Russia, just to defend Ukraine. But so Ukraine, or not Ukraine, sent these drones over to Moscow, over to targeting in particular a posh residential suburb where Putin has a home, probably to try and make him unpopular with the neighbours.
Well, one theory I've heard, which does kind of make sense to me if you go along that sort of follow the money route, is that these are people like the Wagner Group who are trying to wake up Russians and kind of go, you're under attack.
Yeah.
Don't think for one moment that you can remain neutral here. A bit like they said Al-Qaeda were trying to do in 2016, those attacks in Europe that were supposed to alert kind of neutral Muslims to the fact that this was a battle for existential blah, blah, blah. So there is that kind of thing, which Putin doesn't want to happen. He'd rather the populace just kind of let him...
It wouldn't be the first time, too, that the Russian government has killed their own to make a point and to get the public on their side. They did it with the Chechens, they did it with Georgia, and they're doing it with us now.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean, it's also... I think the public's been a bit lackadaisical in their response to this battle. And I think Putin would like more support from them as well.
Yeah, maybe
as well as scaring
more of their sons, possibly.
Yeah.
The final story on that front page, and we're probably done for the night, is on the government WhatsApp messages, which remain elusive.
So Sunak has been accused of trying to of a cover-up, basically trying to cover up ministers' actions during the pandemic because he's not releasing Boris Johnson's WhatsApp records. But this is, I mean, This is a bit disingenuous. They're demanding Boris Johnson's WhatsApp messages because they want to work out what Boris was doing during the pandemic. But really, they want the WhatsApp messages so they can see all the sordid, juicy details, and then it'll become about something else. It'll become about some joke that Boris made, or
about the wallpaper.
But Sunak created the inquiry, and now his own cabinet won't hand over the information being asked. It's very strange. I wonder if he's frustrated by them or if he's really just a puppet. He has really less power than we hope.
And I do think there are a number of people... I think people have a different level of emotional kind of discontent that they need resolution depending on how they've come out of the pandemic. I personally had a lot of career disruption and so on, but didn't lose anyone to it, I think other people feel still very angry and they haven't had the kind of closure they want because they don't feel that we've got to the bottom of how it was it handled badly? In fact, I mean, some people would say...
Well, some people are still suffering from it, too.
Well, I'm angry. Both my parents are still here.
Yeah.
My dad hasn't got it. My dad's 87. He hasn't got it yet. We're going to try to make that happen.
Can we just have a quick look at AI pioneers fear extinction, Scott, on the Times?
Right. Yes, we can. Apparently, the AI pioneers, a list of several people, more than 400 of the world's most distinguished experts in AI theory, have come forward and said in a joint statement that we should be, as a global effort, we should make a global effort because there's a priority. So I'm going to read the statement, actually.
Yeah.
There should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. The letter, organized by the U.S. Center for AI Safety, was a way of coming out for many researchers. People were much too afraid to speak up earlier. We should establish an intellectual, credible concern about the threat that AI poses to humankind.
I don't know how interested people are, but I find this quite interesting. There's a guy called Jeffrey Hinton who's done
really
a lot of
interesting
interviews recently on YouTube. So I recommend people watch it. We should have a look at this Kathleen Stock as well, who has gone ahead with her speech at the Oxford Union despite disgraceful interruptions.
Well, the kids are protesting, but of course they are. They're university students.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is that it was kind of the protest was organized by the LGBTIQ plus kids at Oxford, who also on the same day today had a trans power march and meeting.
Wow.
So they were saying, we're not trying to stop her from speaking. We're just saying that free speech is at question here. Although at Oxford, is it also, they had a protest day themselves on the same day as Catherine Stock speaking. So there is no free speech problem. They've had their, little contests and their little events.
She did manage to speak, but somebody did glue themselves in front of her, which is kind of annoying.
Did. And also about 2 meters away from her.
But Scott, there is a free speech issue because they're block booking seats and then just getting up and leaving when
I agree with you, but they're saying there's a free speech issue, but in their case, there isn't. They've been given full access on the campus. What they're trying to do is not stop her from speaking, but protest her speak and let people know that they're there. They feel completely not just missed, but unrepresented by the faculty. Although 100 faculty members signed a letter saying they don't want her there because of a letter she'd signed months ago.
It's just bizarre, this, and it's not like equal, you know, it's not he said, she said. I've read her book. It is not remotely hateful. It is not trying to stoke.
And it's not they, it's more they said, them said, by the way. He said, she said, for God's sake, read the memo.
Very good. We won't improve on that. And the Sun, Leo, we'll have a quick dip into Schofield Gate.
So Deviant Holly back on Monday. No, Defiant. Sorry, I misread that. It's just, you know, I was expecting it. But no, so there's been some humming and hawing as to whether this morning is going to continue, and if it does continue, if it's going to continue with Holly. She's saying it is. I mean, obviously she's slightly contaminated by the scandal, given that she you know, probably knew some stuff. And,
she does seem to be. I mean, I have no idea about daytime TV or indeed sort of domestic and
who's up
politics
in
these kind of things. But I sense that she's a cannier player behind, because she presents like a really old-fashioned kind of cuddly bimbo. She's gorgeous. She's booby. She's like army squeezy. Yeah. Behind the scenes, I think she's an absolute shark. I mean, this is just my impression.
She's terrifying. She breathes fire at 7 a.m. The thing is, they co-hosted an ice skating show together. Yeah. If at least he's not gay, then it's weird. Of course she knew. Of course everyone knew. Although why they should have to tell anyone before this? Why is it anyone's business? I have no idea.
Well, maybe it will come out at some point. It's very hard to see whether, to what extent it's just a sense that people were deceived, or whether anything that went on that really demanded that degree of secrecy. Finally, the Daily Star, which is, I don't even quite understand this. It is saying cod. There's a picture of Putin. Yeah. What's going on?
Apparently, a beluga whale feared to have been trained as one of Mad Vlad's spies has been spotted. It's wearing a harness, this whale. It was spotted off the Swedish coast.
So this has got a gay angle as well.
It does, but he was only 19, so, you know, Schofield had
some of these
texted him.
They are early starters.
They are. The spy whale was first reported in April of 2019.
Oh, it's called a spy whale now.
Well, the Swedish had called it that in the media. I think they made a bit of a joke out of it. Yeah. And it had a label pinned to it that said equipment of St. Petersburg. I think someone was kind of making a gag, right? Yeah. And sent it down the coast, and it's been floating around now for 4 years, and is going back up the coast of Sweden, back toward the Antarctica. It's in search of love.
But they do use dolphins and mammals, sea lions assist the army, mine clearance and carrying tools. So
absolutely, and they use gerbils to sniff out terrorists in Tel Aviv airport.
They tried that.
That's right. Yes, because it turned out that they were also smelling passengers who were just nervous. Flying. Anyway, that is the front pages of praise. Come back in a few moments for a civil servant striker, vape bans and Chinese scavengers. See you in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive, because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with myself, Simon Evans, and on my left and a feet higher is Leo Kearse and Scott Capurro. We've just been discussing Doug Stanhope, who we're going to have to get out of our imaginations now because we must not challenge him on live television. We kick off with Wednesday's Telegraph on the insides. Leo, 2 words you don't often see together, strike and blob.
So the Home Office staff are threatening to strike over the Rwanda deportation policy. Yeah. The Civil Servants Union said its 16,000 members will consider industrial action if they're forced to implement measures they believe to be unlawful. But they're not elected. They're not the ones deciding if it's unlawful. The courts decide. The politicians are elected by the people. Well, they're just there to enact the will of the people through the
European Court of Human Rights will decide, Leo, whether or not these actions are legal. I mean, let's not be hasty. You know, this is not something for the British people to feel that they have some kind of sovereignty over.
Yeah, apparently not. I just can't believe 13 years in power and the Tories have done nothing to remake the civil service in their image. Yeah. If anything, the civil service has become further, more of a sort of woke, impenetrable blob that controls everything.
But this is interesting, isn't it? Because this is what Trump was always saying about, draining the swamp and the deep state. But of course, we used to have Yes Minister. That was a kind of politically neutral show. Yeah. But the whole point of Sir Humphrey was not that the civil service despised the government. It's simply that it's a dead weight that will prevent you from getting any legislation.
The problem in the US was when Trump tried to fill some of those positions in the civil service with right-wingers who's out the way he did. Yeah. The positions remained empty because he couldn't find them. No. Because people that want to work for high positions in government are more neutral than right or left, actually.
The long march through the institutions is a very interesting phenomenon because I do think it has observably happened, but I don't think it's been coordinated. I think it's more like starlings in a murmuration or something, isn't it? There's a kind of sense of
it just reflects the country. I mean, the country is sort of becoming more left-wing. But I mean, given that we've just heard 80 Albanian migrants committed some pretty horrific crimes in the first 4 months of the year, I don't know, maybe we can house cross-channel migrants with these Home Office staff and let them live with the consequences of their opinions.
It does. I mean, I do think there'd be a lot of popular support, more actually off the back of that than there would have been a few years ago for what do seem like fairly. I still feel it's slightly grandstanding, this kind of.
Yeah, it's going to be found illegal because you cannot make people countryless. You cannot just send them afloat with nothing.
I don't think it will work, but I do think it is probably, I don't know, I think a large division is being created in the British people now, and I do think it is interesting, as you say, that there's this, the civil service blob, who they reflect a certain kind of tier, a demographic, mostly, graduates, essentially, but without much life experience or property or a family.
But it is true that, terrible crimes make for terrible laws, and you don't want what 80 Albanians do to determine what a lot of other people wind up as.
That is true. What did they say? Hard cases make bad law. That's good. Wednesday's Daily Mail now, Scott. We are going to go back to calling it the Chinese virus.
Apparently we are. Watch yourself. I know.
China.
The Chinese authorities secretly, in the Mail claims, the Chinese authorities secretly investigated a lab at the heart of the row over COVID's origin after the pandemic, even though some people were criticized during the pandemic for saying that this started in a lab in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, or WIV. Yeah. People were when people at this network stated that or theorized it, they were accused of
They
being
also
racist.
have a CDC there as well, though, don't they? Which they think there's a second lab, and I think that's the one that's under more scrutiny.
A little bit, yeah. So the government has, and then lied about it, but then the Chinese government has lied about everything around the country.
Of course, and they lied about SARS as well.
Despite being praised by the World Health Organization for their transparency. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, early on into the pandemic, the New York Post ran a story that investigated and revealed that lab technicians in these labs in China were selling the cadavers of animals that had been tested on to the wet market, which would provide an obvious... I mean, obviously, they're supposed to be incinerated. Some of them could have viruses in them.
That is
such
insane.
as COVID. Absolutely, but they were making so much money doing it. So they're way more than their salaries. So there's no incentive for them to stop.
Because the last one, the SARS, came out. I was listening to a radio documentary about it today on a rival channel, which apparently they came out of civets. You know, those little sort of strange, sort of skunky, raccoony type animals that they pass coffee beans through. I've had civet coffee in Brighton. It didn't taste great. I didn't think it was worth it for the sort of visual image I have of literally the bean has passed through the civet. But the idea that it might have had COVID as well, that spices it up a bit. Seriously, though, there was a problem, wasn't there? And I know in America there was definitely a suspicion, a fear, that if they said it has emerged through lax security standards in China,
but
this
why would that be considered
racism.
Why? I don't know. I never understood that.
It's the tribalism. I mean, a scientist even said this. He said, "Well, Trump was saying it, so we could, even though we knew what he was saying was credible, we couldn't agree with it." And it's like, why not? Why have you got to be so tribal?
That is absolutely a danger in the modern world. The Guardian next, Leo, following the ban on kiddie cockfights. Yet another harmless pastime of the young comes under government scrutiny.
So ministers plan to ban retailers in England from giving children free vapes.
Oh, it's so
killjoys.
No fun at all.
When I read this
at Christmas,
when I read this, I was like, I mean, surely that's insane. You can't give vapes to children. But apparently, it's currently illegal to sell vapes to children.
So you have them as a lost leader, just in a bucket at the front of the shop.
It's a little bit of a loophole.
It's not illegal to just give them away because they're not covered by the Tobacco Act or whatever it's called. So they're going to close that loophole basically. But there's been a huge issue with children taking up vaping, and obviously it's addictive. Even if it's better for you than smoking, you still don't want kids to be doing it.
You know, I tried it for about a month. I used to smoke many years ago, gave up in the early 90s. I tried it because there is some research to suggest that nicotine is quite a good little cognitive enhancer if you can avoid all the health risks to do with tobacco.
Right.
And I just became aware that all of the vaping units, I didn't like it in the end, it didn't work for me, but all the vaping units are so obviously marketed at kids. I mean, all the flavours, the colours, the whole, everything about them, it couldn't be more obvious. It's quite sinister.
They don't do a B&H Super
No,
Kings
they don't,
flavour.
exactly.
I think
None of them taste of tobacco, which you think would be like at least one of the choices. But it's like
talked about
bubble gum, bubble tea.
Well, they've done that with wine in America for the last 40 years. In fact, my father was involved with a company that organized and arranged wine for young people, and they made it fruity flavor with a screw top, so they could unscrew it at school and put it in the backpack.
Wow.
Very clever.
And then as you like
with a straw, seriously.
Over to the Mirror now, Scott. Assisted dying has a somewhat unexpected advocate in the church.
Yeah, the ex-Archbishop Lord George Carey has written to MPs saying that the act of assisted dying is an act of great generosity, kindness, and human love. I mean, the church doesn't back his statements at all. They're saying that, you shouldn't kill people. But he's saying, look, I mean, these people have no choice. And actually, when they do die sometimes, they create such a horrible situation for themselves in that they're left alone, they don't have the money, or their suicide, their personal suicide home, what they decide to do is so horrific and so brutal that it's much better and it's much less painful, and much better to have people around who are comforting you while you're dying.
I have an enormous amount of sympathy for the good kind. It is just unfortunately the case, isn't it, that the countries that have adopted it, it does seem to get out of control very quickly.
So quickly. I mean, in Canada, we talk about a slippery slope. I mean, I think the church is right to say, we shouldn't be having medically assisted dying because they've introduced it now. If you're homeless, if you're in poverty, if you have some sort of chronic illness, but a chronic illness can be defined as depression.
Migraines.
So and also young people. There's a mother who found her 23-year-old son, and she just discovered by accident he'd scheduled an appointment to die, to have medically assisted. And he just had depression and he had diabetes. He was somebody who was absolutely viable and could have lived.
Just work through it. Yeah,
there are a lot of people though, and there's only so much asparagus. Seriously.
No, but it's funny you say it. But in Japan, which is another, and I don't know where they are on this particular issue, but one of their senior politicians recently, openly and quite honestly, genuinely, not laced in irony, said that the ancient, and venerable tradition of honourable suicide would have to become a would be revived.
Are they going to do it with a samurai sword?
Yeah,
still?
yeah, the disemboweling.
Really?
Well, in order to redress the ageing population imbalance. I mean, this is, we're some way away from that yet, but that's a developed nation, you know, not a
My father has a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money going to waste. Oh.
Are you going to turn up dressed as a Japanese man?
I'm going to fart on every pillow in his house, whatever it takes. Seriously.
I think with just the old-fashioned Eskimo walk is the way, isn't it? You just go out for a long trek. You know, you wait till there's a nice snowy day, a brisk day up on the hills.
We'll drop him off in a mall.
Yeah.
40 miles away.
Final story for this section, Leo. Wednesday's Telegraph has China accused of watery grave robbing.
So a Chinese ship has been accused of looting from British Second World War shipwrecks. But they're not in Britain, by the way. They're basically in China. They're in the South China Sea.
I think they might have been somewhere... Well, because it was mentioned they were torpedoed shortly after Pearl Harbor, but I don't know if that was... They were torpedoed by the Japanese, right?
Yeah, I think time-wise, but location-wise, it wasn't near Hawaii.
Yes,
they're somewhere near Malaysia, I think. Somewhere.
Yeah,
right, okay.
So, yeah, they're not off the coast of Portsmouth or anything.
No,
But they want to get them because the steel, I didn't know this, but the steel is sought after because it isn't contaminated by radioactive fallout, because it was made before we started testing.
Before Hiroshima, ironically, which was done to them because they torpedoed these ships.
Yeah, but I think all nuclear testing has left nuclear traces in the atmosphere. I don't know why. I think for medical reasons, that the pre-nuclear steel is better.
It doesn't go into detail, does it, in the story? But that's exactly right. It's very highly prized for some reason. It's almost feel like a Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of thing, doesn't it? Like this kind of mysterious quality this steel has.
It's hard to criticize them for it. I mean, they might as well dig it up. Why not, right?
Well, I suppose it is technically a grave. This is the weird thing. I mean, you do kind of make it. It's sacred, you know.
But
on the other hand, you kind of go. It's also first it's a grave, and secondly it's ours.
But if a Celine Dion wrote a hit song about it, nobody'd mind, right?
No, that's true. The what was it called? The Heart of the Ocean.
Something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
My husband
they
loves
could be
it.
like halfway between Titanic and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah,
it's this
somewhere in
kind
there,
of pure steel. Pure steel. It sounds like it's
That's a good name for a song.
Hyperborean like return thing. Anyway, we're at the halfway point. We've got some scorchers coming up. Trans baby, book bans banned, and weighing airline passengers. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
And welcome back to Headliners. We're on the B-side now, straight into Wednesday's Daily Mail. Scott, box-ticking exercises, possibly going too far in Woodgate Valley Health Centre.
Well, yes, there's a German surgery near Birmingham asking parents if their baby is trans, claims the Daily Mail. Apparently, when parents are anyone filling out a form, the question is asked, are you other or non-stated about your gender?
Yeah, so
choice.
they don't adapt it for babies.
Right,
It's a bit
and although that other non-stated is meant for babies. So that confuses parents a little bit. But, you know, it can happen where a baby is born with both sexes. It's less than 1% of babies born.
But they don't like to be called trans, do they? Those people, that's a different incident. They don't want that to be politicised.
And that's a biological rather than a gender.
There is also a thing that I remember from having babies, having children, which are now grown, which is that nurses and doctors and so on refer to them, their pronoun is baby.
Right. Yeah.
They are called baby. We'll put baby here, we'll put baby there. We don't say her, she, then, any of that stuff. And they do it also to me now with my parents. So if I speak to one of my parents, medical, like a nurse or a doctor, they go, would Dad like to do this? Does Dad like? Do you know what I mean? So they don't. I don't know. It's a medical thing, I guess. But it's actually quite good. I think it's kind of quite sensitive.
I think it's because it's you can't remember people's names.
Yes, of course. It's theatrical, isn't it?
And when they're old, you're guessing at their gender anyway, because all couples look the same.
What have you called this one?
Is that he or she? What is that one? We don't know. But yeah, they're asking if babies are non-binary on this form. That's what parents are interpreting it as. And some parents clipped a photo of it and passed it online saying, how dare this, look what they've done, and it's my baby, and please don't sexualize my baby, and all that stuff. So.
I remember when we had a kitten and we went to select it from a basket of kittens and we pointed it, my kids want that one, and they established that it was a girl, and then we went to collect it a few weeks later, brought it home, took it to the vet to get her spayed, and he said, I can't spay her, but I can castrate him. So it is quite easy to make that mistake early on. And so constantly we have a fat eunuch of a cat.
Oh, right, that is sweet.
He is a good cat.
There's a home for everyone.
His name is Holly, which is kind of, non-binary.
Either way,
that's
sure.
right.
Yeah.
I think of him as Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Holly, but I think the kids have a different. I think it was just a Christmas thing. Anyway, Telegraph next. Leo, good news for Illinois Nazis. Copies of Mein Kampf back in the local library.
Well, Illinois will protect history by legislating against book bans. Apparently, there's been an increase in books being banned. I think by both sides. So Mein Kampf is probably banned by some people, but then the right has been coming out like in Florida. Ron DeSantis has been coming through and banning books that are overly sexualised in school libraries.
Yeah. Sort of sex education, graphic novels that go a bit far or whatever.
Some of it is just, a lot of Democrats try and paint it as it being restrictive or anti-LGBTQ or whatever, but it's not. It's like this stuff is just, and they've got pictures, it's like full on.
And you do kind of expect, well, maybe this is appropriate for a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old, but it maybe comes in a bit early or whatever. But this is an absolute battleground now between the Democrats and Republicans, right? This is Illinois. Is a governor, I think, and he's a fairly robust, kind of,
state.
Big meaty guy, and he's coming out two-fisted, and he's kind of going, "We're not afraid of books, Mr. DeSantis." In this part of the
that state is in response to the states surrounding, including Iowa and Indiana especially. But I think it's also the city of Chicago is trying to make a point.
Yeah.
And what they were also afraid of was some books are being banned in Florida that were race-related themed books. And what DeSantis is trying to do, he said today, is destroy the leftists.
Yeah.
So what I think Illinois is trying to do is non-politicized books if they can.
I think that's reasonable. I do remember, though, in the Blues Brothers, Illinois Nazis was a thing. I don't know where it came from, but I think that was quite a hotbed of actual Nazis, right?
Mein Kampf is... I read it. I've read it twice now. I have to say...
I'm waiting for it to come out on Audible, because I can't make my way through heavy text.
I did a finger play about it when I was 8, but it's quite tender, some of that book. It's a diary piece.
I know. He talks about his troubles at school, doesn't he?
And he really did struggle when he was younger.
Yeah. The Jews are barely mentioned. It's a couple
I know, they're hardly brought up. Quite sensitive, that group.
No, I've never read it, but I do. It is odd how often people talking about it disparage it for its literary qualities. I mean, it's clearly an important historical text.
And the word camp has a double meaning in it.
Oh,
anyway.
camp is a struggle, right?
He's quite...
oh, yeah.
You know.
Well, no, that was a big rumour as well.
Well, he is. He wrote love letters to a lieutenant, and you can find them online if you like.
OK, interesting.
They corresponded to
I
one
feel
another.
like we should have a side channel for this conversation, possibly. We stay in America, Scott, unlike your good self, of course, for this next story in the Daily Mail. College is losing its appeal to American high school students.
In the Daily Mail, high school graduates shun college for blue-collar jobs. They're applying for two-year college courses because those are more practical, those courses usually, and they can get on the job circuit much quicker.
Right.
But universities, even state and federal universities, are very expensive.
Yeah.
And these kids just don't have the money. And the pandemic did slow down the university game anyway. People obviously didn't intend. They didn't want to go through their university education on Zoom, so they just didn't go. And then 4 years later, they need a job now as it is. So
I mean, I think that is one of the things, isn't it, that the pandemic did? It broke a lot of strides one way or another.
Yeah.
One of the strides it broke was the obvious, the default mode. I go from straight from school to university, I don't think twice about it. And then they look at it and they go, so what actually have you got then?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and it's not that great.
And I think a lot of people are also inspired by IT jobs and data source jobs where you can educate yourself at home.
Yeah.
You really don't need a degree. They don't help you with that.
Well, YouTube has opened up education to, self-learning. And to be honest, I mean, when I left university after studying for 4 years or whatever, I learned more in my first 2 weeks in a radio station than I did in my entire 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, some courses, I did law, which if I wanted to be a lawyer, was obviously important, and it was still quite a good grounding in argument and reading and so on, but it was clearly, as much as anything, a test of conscientiousness and intelligence. Can you produce a certificate at the end of 3 years to prove you have these qualities?
4 years of drama school didn't teach me how to learn in my first LA audition, which is that I'm a bit too light in my loafers. That's what I was told. I'm like, no one said anything in 4 years. Well, you are. You're a bit, you got to butch it up a little bit. Can you drop your voice a little or something? You got it.
You've made it now, anyway. Express, Leo, a bit of dispute has erupted between members of an academic union. I'm sure this will be very edifying.
So woke unionised university lecturers have been described as deplorable after members voted to stop arming Ukraine. So, so Jess Kent, the UCU delegate from the University of Sheffield, told the conference the war was a cynical game between the US and Russian imperialism. And she said, comrades, I love it when left-wing people call each other hilarious. It's so lame.
So good.
Comrades, the main enemy is at home. We must fight against our own warmongers. We must deal with our own imperialist government. I mean, the war is a cynical game between the US and Russian imperialism, but the US has got to win. The West has to win. You can't just... When people say, oh, no, we shouldn't arm Ukraine because that's encouraging war, it's like, no, what encourages war is when you don't stand up to people like Putin.
I think Biden's being too weak.
They'll use military power to get whatever they want. They'll see that it works, and China will take Taiwan, and France will probably take Britain.
This is the trouble. You're absolutely right. It's not. It is a cynical empire game. You know, it is, but it doesn't mean you can just kind of topple over your king and step back. No. And the speech is online, incidentally. If you want to see it, it's on YouTube.
I mean, I think a lot of people, especially on the left, hope and think, that the West is strong enough that at some point Russia will lose. But we thought that about, Syria and the leader there, and he stuck it out, and he's still
we're
there.
properly invested in this one.
Yeah, hopefully.
We didn't really provide any support to the Syrian dissidents at all.
Well, no, I think a lot of the world's problems actually came from the lack of will and determination to stand.
But that's why we haven't moved in the Ukraine faster, though.
Yeah.
But I mean, what's interesting is people on the right, people on the far right and the far left both criticise our involvement in Ukraine, and people on the far right seem to see Russia as some bastion of traditionalism and Christian values when it's absolutely not. It's got record abortion levels, the highest in
both those countries are terrible countries.
Ukraine is a fantastic country. It's genuinely a fantastic country. And if you were some sort of, far right nut job, you should be.
I will say this: the chap I saw. I mean, I have watched this video. The one they're quoting. He is an absolute throwback. I mean, he's insane. He makes Tony Benn, look like David Cameron at least. You know? And I can't believe that he is representative of the university and college unions. kind of core demographic. I know there'll be a few of them lurking.
Higher education is a different bubble.
Well, OK, let's on to Wednesday's Independent now. Scott, this is a first step in the right direction for those of us who are fed up of being fined for having a few extra kilos in the overhead
Why
locker.
do I get the fat story? I have to ask. I'm feeling a bit bloated. I get the story. Air New Zealand is hitting fat-hating heights. They're about to weigh passengers before they board flights for international flights. It worked for domestic flights with Air New Zealand during the pandemic, right after when people started flying again. They decided to weigh people because they realized people had put weight on at home.
Right.
They made it voluntary, but there were a couple of cases and a couple of videos filmed where people were being asked to weigh themselves by Air New Zealand.
Right.
Could you get on a scale, please? Now, they're saying, don't be worried, don't be frantic about it. If you want, you can do it. If you don't want to, you know. But no one's going to do it unless they have to, I don't think.
Well, no, but I suppose at this point there's no penalty or anything. Maybe they want to know how much, and they want to be able to distribute the weight evenly.
They're saying they weigh everything. They weigh food, they weigh luggage, so why shouldn't they weigh the passengers?
Absolutely, makes sense to me. But the obvious thing to say is, you know, there are some people who take up more than, like, you know, is easily fitted between two arms. I just kind of feel that's an issue.
And that's their decision. I mean, you see these videos, people post videos on Instagram or whatever saying, like, I'm a plus-size model. It's like, no, you're just fat. But I'm a plus-size model, and this plane isn't, you know, it doesn't fit my... We need to have planes that are 50 feet wide and have couches on them. And it's like, no, you need to stop eating pies.
There was a video where they showed a person that couldn't get through the aisle. They said, why are the aisles on planes so narrow? Well, because it's a plane and it's got a
we're trying to minimise the amount.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Exactly. Everything. Final breather now, anyway, before the last big push, which seems like an unfortunate term to use after that conversation. Last big push, we'll have jokes taken in bad faith, smoker breaks, and a band breaks. And we'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners for our final section. Wednesday's Mail has casual sexism at a corporate award ceremony. This is very much my turf. Let's have a look at the video.
I'm not going to give this to Alex because it's so heavy. I've just been in a weight training session. Jason, you can try if you want.
I think you can take it quite happily, can't you?
Hold it. Careful.
John, you need to do a bit more weight training. It's not that heavy.
It is quite heavy.
Do you want me to take it? Sure.
And that, funnily enough, was Jeff Shreves invigilating there, who is Sky TV's football commentator. I was at school with Jeff.
Oh, really?
Same year as me, yeah. We're rival TV stars. Lovely fella. But, yeah, it's just a silly joke, but they're saying that was
He was being funny. He got booed a little. You can hear the booing in the background.
Yeah. I think he made the girl slightly uncomfortable, but I think that was because she wasn't sure what to do about it. She wasn't offended. She was just confused.
She joked. She was like, oh, it is actually pretty heavy. I think he was making a joke because it was a really heavy award.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't...
He was flirting with her.
It wasn't a great joke. It was just... He's just filling dead air.
Feel the weight of it in your hands, darling.
Yeah. He's old school. He's being silly, and he just thought she'd laugh at it.
But anyway. This is a pretty much a non-story. This is one of these stories where they find some tweets where people have tweeted, "Oh, this is bad, whatever," and then they've made it up into this. People aren't protesting in the streets over this.
And some poor old fella now is going to be slightly embarrassed.
Feel bad.
At university goes, "Dad, what have you done? You're a disgrace."
Although his mates are going to buy him a pint at the pub. They will. They will.
No,
they'll toast him for it.
I think it's always nice when your awards do weigh something. I give out awards maybe once or twice a month. I do some award ceremony. I'm very, very grateful for the work. Please continue to contact my agent.
I will do it for half the price.
You certainly would.
I promise to
We should probably team up, the three of us, actually. It could be a package.
When I won the first Perrier, it had 2 nicks on it. Really? And Nika Byrne handed it to me after the award ceremony was over because my show was on at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I handed it back. I said, "Can I get an award that's right?"
That's why it's called. That's why she's called Nika. She nicks the awards.
Nicked it, she threw it. How did he won? Boom, smashed it first, and then gave it to me. Anyway.
Cigarette break news now. I don't know how many of us in this office still enjoy a gasper. I did see a certain well-known presenter from the daytime slot enjoying a fag out the front earlier. Yeah. But apparently, if you take regular cigarette breaks, it amounts to a week's extra holiday.
The director of one of the yoga places I go to in London is one of them. The director of the yoga place smokes. And smokes right outside. And we're in there doing downward dog, and I'm like, can anyone smell that? So yes, he takes quite a while. Yeah, he leaves the building, but you never go far enough away, do you?
So they're saying 39
weeks is
39
the total.
hours.
Sorry, 39 hours.
Yeah.
Sorry, 39 hours. 1 week's worth of work is.
So it's like a roughly about 50 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Over a year, though, they take a week off to smoke.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, I wonder how much time it takes off their life. Maybe more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably more than a week.
You've got to claw that back.
Yeah.
Well, then it saves the company money in pensions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, is it their pension or is that certainly the state pension? You know,
but it costs us more money because the NHS has to cover their dirty lungs.
Yeah, but you die quickly with lung cancer. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it is.
It's not necessarily. There
Yeah.
are lots of other nasty ways you can die, though, of course, of smoking. My nan, bless her, had emphysema, which was pretty horrible, lasted for a long time. And,
So she held on?
Yeah.
How dare she? That cost us money.
I mean, she had character, and also it did sort of suit her, the gravelly voice.
Oh, right.
She was a Cockney to begin with. She turned into Ray Winston over the last few years. Anyway. All right, Simon. Life on Mars now, Leo. This is originally filmed in Manchester, of course, Life on Mars, but according to the Daily Mail, they've relocated it underground to Yorkshire.
This is a different Life on Mars. This is actually living on Mars.
Oh, actually.
When we go there, Elon Musk is going to take us to Mars, apparently. Not you and me, but, humanity.
Yeah.
So they're practicing for Life on Mars in a mine in Yorkshire. They're recreating the Red Planet 1 mile underground to study how humans will survive. So basically, they need to, if we go to Mars, we need to live in these salt caves underground because Mars is bombarded with radiation. There's no atmosphere because there's no people. So how could there be atmosphere? There's nobody.
It's like a comedy club in Sheffield. There's no people, no atmosphere, nothing. Yeah.
So they're testing out in this salt mine.
I mean, I'm not convinced by this whole moving to Mars thing. Are you? I know the planet is compromised, but it feels like there's a little bit more life in the place yet than you're going to encounter, however well they terraform Mars.
Yeah.
I know it's quite exciting to think about, like, spreading out our mission around the stars, but
the thing is, can we live in a 9-foot wide tunnel for the rest of our lives?
So,
I mean, I think people will.
People are complaining about the narrowness of the aisle on the 747.
Exactly, I know. We can send all the chubbies up there, 9 feet wide, right? Let's waddle around.
I think we need a mass extinction event, and then we can just settle down and enjoy what's left. The truculent artiste news now in the Times. We have a clip of this as well. Royal blood bringing the monarchy into disrepute. Scott, let's take a look at the clip.
We're having to clap ourselves because that was so pathetic. Well done, Ben. Can you clap for us? Can you clap? You're busy. Can you clap? He's busy. Yes, even he's clapping. What does that say about you?
Now, I've got to be honest, I'm a little bit biased in favour of Royal Blood because they're local lads, they're Worthing. So I am on Team Royal
Well, their
Blood, but they've upset some people.
Their Waitrose accent tantrum didn't do them any favours, apparently. They played a song, no one clapped. There were not many people in the audience, apparently, and 9 people applauded, and they're like, how dare you, we need some more support up here, come on, you guys, give it. And the audience wasn't giving it, so they walked off.
I think it's bad to walk off. I don't think it's necessarily bad to tease the audience for being a bit lacklustre. They're Scottish, right? They're Aberdeen.
Right.
Is that where they are?
It's a pop festival, and so, or at least it was the sort of...
The BBC festival, the BBC Pop Festival,
so they weren't really kind of on the right stage.
It was early in the day. The kids weren't drunk and stoned enough. Also, their big album was 200014. Most people in that audience had never heard of it
I used to power walk to that album. It's really good. Yeah, power walk along the seafront. It's kind of like White Stripesy, heavy blues, you know.
All right. Little Monster and Out of the Black, you know those songs?
Oh, they're good. It was good stuff.
Can we hear a little? Let's hear some. Let's hear a little. Come on.
I can't remember what the songs are called. But they sort of riff really heavy. They go. It's like it's more heavy than Metallica. It's more grinding.
Do they need a crowd response when they're doing that noise?
No, they could have just done it. But I don't think they sound that posh either. I don't know. Kids just have no tolerance for remote.
Yeah, that's
not an accent. They've got the accent. They hate Mumford & Sons as well, don't they?
All right.
I guess.
I like Winston from Mumford & Sons.
Yeah, he's a GB News friend, isn't he?
Yeah,
but he's not allowed in Mumford anymore either.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Sounds
cancel
like class
culture.
war. It is. It's cancel culture anyway. I think they'll survive. Finally, Leo, consumer affairs in the mirror. Sounds like Aussie supermarkets have a reliably rough-hewn approach to customer service.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So this woman, her two-year-old son, threw up in the supermarket, which is called Woolworths, but it's nothing like that. It wasn't in the pick and mix. This is in Australia, where it's just like a regular supermarket. And staff insisted that she clean up the child's vomit herself. I mean, to be fair, she could have just left. They weren't holding her under arrest. But this is I love how Australians are just like, over here, and be like, oh no, we're so sorry, let's do everything for you. But over there,
and
they're
there'd
like...
be a big sort of screen all around the puke, so that no one slips over it, triggering a massive
with little speed cones.
Yeah, but in Australia, they're like, you know what, you can do that yourself. I mean, they probably say it in Australian accent.
There is Woolworth is a brand in America as well, isn't it?
It used to be, yes. And I used to go to the weenie counter at Woolworths with my grandmother. Yeah. And a big pink weenie in a bun. It was delicious.
It's in a lovely old song called Tonight at the Five and Dime.
It certainly is.
I can't remember her name. What was her name? Sort of folk artist?
Joan Baez?
It's like that. But anyway, look it up. Tonight at the Five and Dime. Lovely. And the squeak of fresh popcorn.
When that closed in San Francisco, I thought that's really the end.
That's
really
the end.
Yeah,
the show is nearly over. Woolworths or no. Let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. The Daily Mail. AI could wipe out humanity. The Guardian, government accused of cover-up over battle for COVID evidence. The Daily Express, civil servants threatened to strike over migrants, and Phil and Holly there together again. The Times, AI pioneers fear extinction, not face extinction, as I said last time. The Sun, defiant Holly is back on Monday. The Daily Star, finally, the spy who came in from the cod about a beluga whale that has been trained to spy on us. Those were your front pages. My thanks to Leo Kurz and Scott Capero. We're back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Andrew Doyle, Leo and Nick Dixon. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, good night.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.